let's talk about sex. Specifically ancient sex. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Jean Mingus. I'm an ancient historian and author, and today I'm sharing some super exciting news with you, which is that I officially have a publication date for my first ever full-length trade adult non-fiction book. What does that mean? Because those are a lot of words. I have in the past written a number of children's non-fiction books for teens and, well, children. I've edited and contributed to academic books, like this one, I'll probably pop it up on the screen here, and also written a very short little pocket-sized book on classical receptions. But this book that I'm going to be talking about today is my first ever full-length non-fiction book that is intended for a wide audience, and that is of course Aphrodisia, Women, Sex and Pleasure in the Classical World. So if the title isn't self-explanatory enough, and I do feel that that is the point of a non-fiction subtitle, this book is all about sex and antiquity, specifically focusing in on women and the search for their sexual pleasure and their desire. Because even in recent decades, as research into the history of sex and sexuality has increased and there's been more and more published, which is amazing, there has still been a large focus on men in antiquity, and there is a reason for that which I can understand, and that is historians being guided by the fact that most evidence is written by men. But does that mean we should ignore the women? Does that mean we should forget about the women or consider them second in importance, just like the ancient patriarchal structures did? No, it does not. And that is why I chose to research and write this book. So this book has actually been in the makings for a really long time. In some ways, I think my whole academic career has kind of led up to this point, when I consider the fact that even way back when I was doing my undergraduate dissertation in 2014, I wrote it on erotic similes in ancient Greek literature. And then during my PhD thesis, which you may very well know was all about sexual violence, I became more and more intrigued by this line of research that I then took with Aphrodisia. Sort of grew and grew and grew. It became something I was quite passionate about and really desperate to look more into, to research, to study and to compile evidence on, because so often, like I mentioned, the research on sex and pleasure is either about men, or when it comes to women, it's like my PhD thesis, it's about sexual violence. And I really wanted to see what evidence we could find for women's sexual pleasure and the manifestation of their desire and their sexuality in antiquity, particularly in the ancient Mediterranean, in the classical world, in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and the other areas in which they settled, which is my speciality. And that is what I've done in this book. After taking a short break post PhD thesis, I started to compile more and more evidence until I felt like I had a fully rounded book proposal, and I took it to my agent, who helped me draft up a really nice pitch and some sample material, and we took it out to publishers. And I'm so honoured to say that I ended up signing a contract with Monterey, who are an imprint of Octopus at Hachette, and I've had the most wonderful experience with them. My editor Mala has been incredible, and it's been so wonderful having my agent and my editor really believe in this book and champion this book. I think that is what has made it come to be in the shape it is now, and I have written it for a wide audience. So my intention with this book is not for it to be a dusty academic volume that only other scholars can read. It's for anybody. It's for anybody who's interested in antiquity, that's interested in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, that's interested in the history of women more broadly, and also the relevancy of ancient history and history more broadly to today, because I do draw and talk about some modern parallels and discuss modern theories around sex, and also just how history is relevant to us today. Because one of the things I firmly, thoroughly, strongly believe is that history is not just the wars, the political successions, the imperial families. It's also about what happens in between and in the sheets. It's about ordinary life, it's about ordinary experiences and ordinary people, and that's something I try to focus in on this book, and that's what you should expect from this book. But for anybody who'd like a little bit more of a breakdown, deep dive into what exactly the book contains, I'll talk a little bit more about the contents before, I think, reading you the foreword, because I think that is what best sort of encapsulates my hopes and dreams and intentions with this book, as well as what it contains. So the introduction discusses the study of sexuality in antiquity and also women's sexuality more recently in modern studies, in order to kind of like trace where we're at with that, the biases and the prejudices that have influenced research in the past, and what to expect in the book more broadly. Then in chapter 1 I do a deep dive into women's voices, because although text written by women relative to men are few and far between from antiquity, they do exist. Not just Sappho either. I do talk about Sappho, but there are a number of female poets from antiquity, both in Greece and Rome, who talk about sexuality, sex, pleasure, and their own desire, and put that into words. We also have graffiti and curse tablets which preserve women's voices. So I wanted to use them to establish the tone of the book and to kind of give us a foundation of what we'll look at next. Then in chapter 2 I look at medical treatises and the way in which ancient medicine throughout Greece and Rome treated women's bodies, approached sexuality and sex, and what it had to say on those topics and how that might have influenced women's lived experiences. Because trust me, they had a lot to say. Then in chapter 3 I get into one of my favourite subjects, the nitty-gritty of the legal stuff, because of course the laws are going to impact your sex life if you're living in the ancient world. And when I mean laws, I mean the laws around marriage, adultery and divorce, looking at a few different case studies from different Greek city-states and the Roman Empire, so you can get a flavour of actually how different things could be for different women. Antiquity is not just a matter of a few thousand years, it's also lots of different governmental bodies who had different laws and different expectations of women in their societies, and I think that's really important, because it's all too easy to say, oh well, women were second class citizens, their history is unimportant, we can't know anything, they had no freedoms, what's even the point? There is a point, and actually some of the freedoms they had might surprise you even within those patriarchal structures. But if that doesn't sound sexy enough, then just you wait for chapter 4, which is all about sex manuals, because this was actually an entire genre of literature in antiquity advising men and women about how to have sex, how to enjoy themselves, and how to pleasure their partner. And in chapter 4 I'll be looking at those texts as well as other ways in which women might have learnt about sex. Then a chapter you might not expect, because if you only have one very specific idea about what religion means in a modern sense, then you probably don't associate it with sexuality. But in antiquity there is huge overlap between sex and religion, and that is why chapter 5 is dedicated to that subject. And of course, if you ever have read anything about sex and sexuality in antiquity, one of the things you've probably come across is some of the absolutely wild rumours surrounding women of imperial Rome, because sex was used against them, but it might have also been something they used themselves. So that's why in chapter 6 I explore the rumours and gossip surrounding the sex lives of ancient Roman imperial women. Before in chapter 7 getting to one of my favourite topics, one of the topics that really largely inspired this book, and that is the ancient dildo and ancient sex toys more generally, because trust me, there's a lot to be said on the subject of ancient Greek and Roman dildos. Then finally, there was only one way I could round out this book in chapter 8, which was to discuss sexual taboos, specifically sexual taboos as they apply to women in antiquity. What exactly those taboos were, however, you will have to read the book to find out. So that's a little breakdown of Aphrodisia, but now I'm going to read you the foreword and hopefully give you a little bit of flavour of what to expect, equally from the audiobook, which I myself will be reading and will come out at the same time as the physical hardback. I do not have this memorised. Aphrodisia, ancient Greek noun and adjective, belonging to the goddess of love, festival of Aphrodite, and sexual pleasures. From the name for the Greek goddess of love and lust, Aphrodite, comes the origin of our modern term aphrodisiac. So you probably didn't need the title of this book defined for you to understand it. Even in the ancient Greek, it has a multitude of meanings. Yet in many ways, it quite succinctly sums up the intention of this book, to explore that which belongs to Aphrodite. The sexy stuff, the arousing stuff, the pleasurable stuff, the desirable stuff. All as it is experienced by women in the ancient world. I was aware when I chose to undertake this project that even today, 2,000 years on from much of the material I will be discussing, there remains a lot of shame and stigma attached to the topic of women's sexuality. You are never more than a click away from a social media post declaring that women's love of smut will lead to the downfall of literature, nay, society. Clearly, these detractors are unaware that trope-filled romance novels were just as popular in antiquity. Meanwhile, women are still having their sexual history brandished against them during rape trials, despite UK court guidelines meant to protect them from exactly this. Yet, I do believe that there is more space today for conversations around women's sexuality than there ever has been in modern times. As you'll learn from the upcoming introduction, there's not a chance on Olympus that this book would have been published, let alone taken seriously 100 years ago. I even wonder if 10 years ago I might have struggled to put this research in your hands. Research that I think is incredibly important. Women's lives are vast and complex. This was as much true 2 millennia ago as it is today. And sex and pleasure are a part of that. It is too easy, too lazy to dismiss sex as an unimportant facet of society. Worse yet, the sex lives of women, because our predecessors considered them inferior. But there is power in sexuality. There is power in pleasure and joy. There is power in women celebrating themselves as sexual beings in a world that so often sees them as sexual objects. And that is my foreword. So there you have it. Aphrodisia will be out officially on the 7th of May, which I feel like is going to come around any minute now, so not too long, although you have a few months to wait, and you can officially pre-order it. So I'll have a bunch of links down below to places you can pre-order your copy. It will be coming out in hardback and audiobook on the 7th, and I should actually take this opportunity to say how in love I am with this cover. The design team at Monterey, I am in awe. Have you ever seen anything this gorgeous? I am obsessed and I cannot wait to hold a physical copy in my hand. It's inspired by some of my favourite red figure pottery from ancient Greece because that stuff is explicit. And I can't wait for all of you to hold it in your hands as well. So if you would like to pre-order it or add it to your Goodreads or Storygraph to read list, then that would be so very much appreciated. I cannot tell you how big a difference those little things before release make to a book success, and also just like my little ancient historian heart. So please do check out the links down below, and hopefully you're as excited about this book as I am. If you have any questions, please do just ask them in the comments down below, because I've probably forgotten to say something in this video. I'm just so excited to finally be talking about it. I have had this under my hat for so long, and I've just wanted to gush about this topic and talk more about it, and I hopefully will be doing more events around release time across the UK. I'm hoping to plan quite a few with different bookshops, so if you would like me to come and do an event at a book festival or bookshop near you, then please do let that venue know to contact me or my publisher, because I'll go wherever I need to go, because I am desperate to talk about women's sex lives in antiquity. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye everyone!